Hello, my name is Paul Wegner, and I'd like to talk to you today about my personal philosophy of motivation. What is motivation? It's a reason one has for acting or behaving in a certain way. It can either be an internal reason or it can be an external reason. There are components that make up motivation. There are usually three aspects that are talked about. There's affective factors, there are physiological factors, and there are cognitive factors. Howard Gardner did lots of work with cognitive factors, talking about multiple intelligences, saying that there's 8 different ways in which people are cognitively wired, which helps play into their motivation. They're mathematical, logical, linguistic, intrapersonal, that means solitary, kinesthetic, spatial, visual, they're interpersonal, social, they're naturalistic, dealing with nature, or they're musical. So those are some of the aspects that make up motivation. There are different people who have different theories of motivation. One of them is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who has a flow theory, which is to create a situation where students are so engrossed in a project they lose track of time. He talks about the project having to be challenging, but not overwhelming. Has to be demanding of all one's skills and concentration. The project has to be where the student's in control, working toward a clear goal, and the goal is related or relative to the student. In other words, it's something they're interested in. Another theory is Martin Ford's goal theory. He talks about people do things because they want to complete a goal, either a cognitive goal or a self-assertive social goal, a task goal, an effective goal, an integrative social goal, or a subjective organizational goal. There's several of them with examples listed there. There's also another gentleman, technically not a motivational theory, but Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. This is a way in which, because people are wired to communicate in a certain way, you can reward them in a certain way, which is more beneficial. Physical contact, quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, and gifts. Finally, we have the great psychologist Maslow, who talked about this hierarchy of needs, that there are physiological, safety, love, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization needs, and that the base ones need to be filled first before we can move up to others. In other words, before a person can actually deal with self-esteem, they got to make sure that they have food, that they're breathing, that they have property, someplace they can sleep, that these baser needs are met as well. And if a person is not motivated, it's because maybe one of these needs down here hasn't been met. Another theory is from this gentleman by the name of Richard Lavoie. He talks about 8 different ways in which we're motivated as well. Naturally by inquisitiveness, by status, affiliation, autonomy, power, achievement, gregariousness, or aggression. And he says because of that there are 6 different ways we can motivate, either with prestige, praise, projects, power, people, or prizes. So those are lots of different theories of motivation. My personal motivational style, that is my default or my natural teaching style, I'm going to talk about as we go back and look at each one of these. But my philosophy is different than my motivational style. My philosophy is almost exactly the opposite. If I'm naturally hardwired to teach in this way, then my philosophy must be this: to actively and intentionally to reach out to students unlike me with theories and strategies that are not mine by nature. Let's go back over. All of these are listed in a certain order. I made very clear of that. These are the ones that I'm really high in. This is what my natural default is. So these are the ones I need to put extra special attention on to reach the students that are like this and not like me. The same over here. These are the ones I'm really strong in. These are the ones that I'm naturally going to reach people who are like this because they're like me. For people who aren't like me, I need to strive to reach ways to reach them, to motivate them. Same for this area here. Here's my style. These here, these are the ones I need to work on. If I am somewhere in here, in Maslow's hierarchy, I need to make sure that if there are students who are still in this area, that I'm going to reach them and motivate them with these needs as well. And going over here to Richard Lavoie's, this is naturally my strong suit. I wrote them in a certain order exactly. Inquisitive, status, affiliation, autonomy. This is what I'm good at. This is what I need to focus on. This is what I would like for motivation for myself. This is what I need to work on as my personal philosophy because I'm not motivated by prizes or people or power as much. I need to actively work on that so that the students that are motivated by these things can then be encouraged to learn. And finally, one last bit is must explain the difference between equitable and equal. Equitable means fair but different. Equal means all exactly the same. You have to make sure students understand that I'm going to treat each of you differently because each of you is different. For the person that's motivated by prestige or praise, I'm going to treat them in a certain way. For the person that's motivated by power or prizes, I might treat them in a different way. And as long as students understand you're going to be fair, then it makes sense. So maybe someone will say, how come I didn't get to choose the problem because I gave one student some power? Well, you didn't get to choose, but if you'd like to choose, you can on the next one. But if you'd rather, instead of choosing, I can do something else like give a phone call home to your mom because you're really high up here in praise. And as long as you give the students choice and let them choose, they're going to understand that you're being fair, that you're being equitable. Finally, the last cardinal rule, remember the number one fear of middle students and high school students is the fear of embarrassment. So you have to create a safe environment where kids can fail without the fear of embarrassment. And always leave an option for them to opt out and still save face. So if someone is not being motivated by something that they traditionally would, I always think in the back of my mind, maybe there's some fear of embarrassment here which is getting in the way. And if I can alleviate that, remove that, or make sure that they feel safe, then my motivation is not going to be impeded. So I thank you very much for your time and attention. My name has been Paul Wegner. This has been my personal philosophy of motivation.